Welcome. Today we're talking about benefits and values of outdoor recreation. Although chapter 3 is really short, it's got a lot of really important information for us to discuss. So we're just going to start. Our objectives of this chapter are to talk about personal benefits, socio-cultural benefits, environmental benefits, educational benefits, economic benefits. Then I'd like you to experience the benefits by going outside for a walk, and I'd like you to take some time to reflect about your experience outside. There's tons of articles you can find about the 5 health benefits of nature, or the 10 health benefits, or the 3 health benefits. The reality is spending time in nature is important. And I think today in society, a lot of people don't spend time in nature, and it's really important. And this chapter focuses on all the things that can provide. When it comes to personal benefits, there's a lot of psychological well-being, spiritual values, physical well-being, and challenges and adventure. So the psychological well-being is the mind. The spiritual value, you might say your soul or your inner self. Physical well-being is often what we think of when we think of recreation, like going for a run. And then challenge and adventure have more to do with personally challenging yourself in a way that makes you learn about other things beyond the actual challenge. So we'll get in depth a little bit on some of these, but it's important for you to realize that there's 4 personal benefits from spending time outdoors. The physical well-being, these are some statistics pulled off a report that's done every year about the benefit of going outdoors. It's an annual study. I will link this on Canvas for you. It has a lot of really interesting information. However, these are some of the highlights of the 2002 report. This report is always about a year behind because it takes a while to analyze the data. So outdoor recreation grew 2.3% in 2022. And 55% of U.S. populations age 6 or older did participate in the outdoors. Now, during the pandemic, a lot of people actually did go outdoors a ton, but the type of outdoor recreation they did was different. So you will notice in the gray little bar, the second bar, that participation declined for first time since the pandemic in 2020 when it came to the number of outings per participant. So more people are going outdoors, however, the number of outings they do are less. And I think that's because after the pandemic, people then started had to going back to work and not having all this like free time. This is a general trend in the outdoors currently, and I do not think it's going away, but accepting more diversity when we talk about getting people that are different people to go out and recreate, Black, Hispanic, LGBTQIA, and various other groups. A lot of organizations now are trying to promote diversity in the outdoors. One thing that's interesting to report is that a lot of this has to do with cultural relationships to the outdoors. And so if you think a little bit about someone who potentially is homeless or housing challenged, they might not look at the outdoors as a safe place or a fun place to go. For other people, going outdoors because of their identity has not been a safe place. So I think there's a lot more deeper issues in getting the outdoors to be equally represented by diverse backgrounds. So I think it's something to think about, and there's more to it just than a number. 80% of outdoor activity categories experience participation in growth. What's interesting here is that things like camping and fishing to you might be outdoors, but for other people, it might be sport climbing, skateboarding, or like hula hooping. So often we don't care what the outdoor activity is, but sometimes when we read a statistical report, we don't realize that for one person, skateboarding is an outdoor experience, and another person it is, rock climbing or camping far away from people. Again, I think the big article is interesting to read. It will be linked in Canvas, but I think, statistical data, you need to know a little bit more about the background of the content to understand the whys of why trends are going a certain way. Walt Whitman is an American philosopher and writer, and he had this great quote that says, "Now I see the secret of making the best person. It is to grow in the open air and eat and sleep within the earth." So Walt Whitman was someone who really promoted people to just go outside and be with nature. And I think there is something said for having that experience to sleep outside with the earth in fresh air and eat not at a table inside. And this is just one of the more prominent quotes of Walt Whitman. There are some people that are in this book that I'd like for you to know, even if it is just knowing their name and who they are related to. So Aldo Leopold wrote the Sand County Almanac. He is also the father of wildlife ecology. The Sand County Almanac is a very kind of artistic book that has a lot of descriptions of nature. You have an excerpt in Canvas, but ethics is a lot of what Aldo Leopold talks about. Henry David Thoreau, you probably are familiar with that name. He's a naturalist and philosopher. Although Henry David Thoreau does not always go into outdoor recreation, being a naturalist is important because he kind of promotes people going into nature, but not necessarily doing a lot more than just going into it. John Muir, which we've heard a ton about and will continue to hear a ton about, is sometimes known as John of the Mountains or Father of the National Parks. And he is a very influential person when it comes to Yosemite, California. He was an ecologist. He was a famous biologist. And he is a man of his times. So know that John Muir's personality grew up in a certain era, and some of his writing is a little bit controversial because of the time era he grew up in. Stephen Mathers is a conservationist. Unlike John Muir is a preservationist. So Stephen Mathers was the first director of the national parks. That is a name that often comes up when talking about national parks or talking about conservation. And Stephen Mathers and John Muir were opposites, even though ultimately they wanted the same thing. And we've talked about Howard Sandheiser, who wrote the Wilderness Act. And just a little fun fact is that Wilderness Act had about 17 drafts before it was agreed upon. I want you to think about nature and what it offers. So this is a great time for you to kind of pause and think about the psychological benefits or things that you value about nature. I've picked this slide specifically because it's Havasupai Falls, which is in the Havasupai Reservation, which is near the Grand Canyon. And it has become, unfortunately, very commercialized and popularized. But this is a great piece of nature that used to be more pristine. So pause the video and think about what nature provides to you or to others. Great. So here's a little list that I came up with. So freedom. So this ultimate sanctuary or place of freedom. I think about being at Havasupai, like being near water, having that ultimate decision to like, I can pick up a rock, I can throw it in the water and it makes a kerplunk sound. I could go for a swim. I could just sit there and have the spray of the waterfall in my face. A place of solitude. Now, ironically, I would love it if I could confidently say, like, when you go to this place, you'll be by yourself, but you won't. And I think that is one of the downfalls of people going and exploring the outdoors, is that more and more there's a lack of solitude. Also a place of silence, with silence from man-made sounds and only natural sounds prevailing. So here you might hear the waterfall, but you're not going to hear people, you're not going to hear machinery, you're not going to hear stuff. And those two things are really hard to find these days. Encouraging contemplation. A lot of our philosophers talk about just going to nature and sitting, and solace. So I want you, once you're done watching this video, to go for a walk outside, to go sit outside. I realize it's cold in Wyoming, so that you might choose the walk instead. And I want you to take time for solitude, silence, contemplation, and just kind of clearing the mind. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the next couple slides. But that is part of your assignment this week, to go for at least 10 minutes outside to experience nature. Spiritual values. This is a nice quote by John Muir, just saying, look, be outside. Wilderness is a necessity, and the mountain parks and reservations are not useful, not only as a mountain of timber and irrigating rivers, but as a fountain of life. I will fix this slide for you. A lot of people go to the wilderness for meditation and contemplation. Similar to what nature offers, meditation and contemplation offers a little bit more. So I want on your walk to think about the values you have, what's important to you, your place of existence in the world, one's condition of existence. I want you to like harness peace and serenity. And for some of you, that might be a challenge. It is hard to like let go. And the idea here is that contemplation is leading to higher thoughts and feelings, and also leads to real joy. Meditation is not for everyone, and contemplation is not for everyone. You are also more than welcome to go down to counseling services and sit in the room we were in last week and check out the massage chairs, the Zen garden. Just sit in there and contemplate. So if it is too cold out, at least go for a 10-minute walk, and then also try to get some meditation or contemplation. This is a place that we're all familiar with, and I want you just to think about nature. We'll probably see hundreds and thousands of pictures of the Grand Tetons, but nature is what makes kind of all of these thoughts and ideas inside us flourish. Social culture benefits. I picked this slide based on the fact that this is Anasazi pottery, and for certain cultures, nature is a significant portion of their culture, and it has significance. So the pottery is made from the earth. People made the pottery with their hands. It means something to their people. And it has value for trade or for eating or storing grain. And it's a balance of nature, economy, culture. And so some cultures have, I would say, less significance with nature, but a culture like the Anasazi really is directly related to the earth. And so You might be familiar with other cultures that have less or more relationships. And I think it's important to just realize that every culture at some point probably has a tie to land for a different reason. I think about farming and agriculture. For some cultures, it's really important to have that experience and that piece of their livelihood and identity. And for other folks, like it's something different. And I think of like the ocean versus the mountains. Like think about a culture like the Chumash that live on the ocean. Their identity is linked to the ocean, and the Anasazi are linked to canyons, clay, and they're very different cultures. And the Chumash are really interesting people based off California that live on the ocean. Environmental and educational benefits of the outdoors and recreation. This is the classic food web analogy, but the whole goal here of nature and education benefits is that nature often teaches us things that we forget about. And one thing is that everything is related. What happens with one part of nature affects the other part of nature. And in life, one thing affects another thing. So every person is important in this system, and we all contribute to the welfare of others. So ultimately, you are just part of a whole, and the whole adds to the meaning of our existence. So take a moment to contemplate that, but every action you have is like a ripple effect or interconnected. Something as simple as like maybe in your life, like not doing something, maybe like not being on time for something affects the outcome of someone else's experience. And so here, imagine like looking at this slide, if we took away the frog or something in the center of this food web, that would affect the eagle, the python, the grasshopper, the butterfly, the fruit fly, the dragonfly. That's a lot. And so we as people, similar to nature, have these interconnections. And so a lot of outdoor and environmental programs talk about the environmental connection, and they use that to educate about self. Yeah. Okay. Kind of transitioning, we're going to talk about a little bit about economic benefits of the outdoors. This is the Grand Canyon. These are all Park Service people. But by the Grand Canyon being an economic attraction, the park attracts visitors. The visitors spend money. The hope is that they spend money in the park and at the surrounding towns like Flagstaff. So other services in the area support that economic business. So now people are flying to Flagstaff, they're taking a bus or train to Flagstaff with the goal of going to the Grand Canyon. Now the Grand Canyon is a little bit remote, and parks offer employment, and then people make money, and then people are more likely to spend money in the local economy. And the park spends money on staff and facilities, and the hope is that it flourishes. Now, in the US, we have a lot of places that are like, we would call touristy, like Yellowstone, Yosemite, Grand Canyon. And the hope of these places is that they flourish the economy. So in Wyoming, we have the Grand Tetons and we have Yellowstone. So West Yellowstone, even Pinedale is kind of your route between those two. So Pinedale, Jackson, West Yellowstone, and all those cities in the middle all flourish because of this natural attraction. It is for better, for worse, but the hope is that these natural pieces help with the economy of the areas. And the hope is to provide local employment, jobs, and money spending. This last little piece is about the objectives of outdoor recreational professionals. And this is something to think about and really take away from this. But there's 5 things as an outdoor recreational professional you should make sure you do with your program or self when outdoors with others. 1 is spend time to appreciate nature. The whole goal of going outdoors is to be there. So spend time appreciating it. Don't just hike to the top of the mountain, turn around and come back. The other is personal satisfaction and enjoyment. So for some of us, it might be getting to the top of the mountain. For other people, it might just be being outside and enjoying that space. And I think there's a balance when you go on an outdoor trip to make sure goals match. Physical fitness is a really common reason for people to go outdoors. We've talked about this a little before, but these are our weekend warriors. And these people like utilize the outdoors as fitness, and they might not use it in the same way as you or I. So the hope is that you do all 5 of these, but some people when they go to nature on their own only do 1 of these. Positive behavioral patterns. I think this is directly linked to Leave No Trace, but we want people to plan ahead and prepare or create positive, healthy benefits or behaviors. And so getting someone to go outdoors and maybe getting a little cold, a little wet because they forgot their rain jacket, they're like, oh, I need to be prepared for the outdoors. This is important because it creates a habit that is beneficial and positive. In environmental stewardship, this is what like John Muir, Stephen Mathers, John Dewey, even Henry David Thoreau and Teddy Roosevelt all want people to love the land that they're part of and then take ownership. Environmental stewardship is a big subject, which you will cover a little bit more in Leave No Trace from reading Guy Waterman's book. But I'd like you to think probably about the Grand Tetons or Yellowstone, whichever one you identify more with, and think about that feeling that park creates within you. If you care about something enough, you will preserve it. And a lot of experiences in these big parks, the goal is to educate people about the area so that they have some attachment and love towards it to care for it. And that is the end. So don't forget that once you finish this video, the expectation is you go spend some time outside, not thinking about school, not thinking about work, not thinking about life, but just thinking about nature and thinking about yourself. You'll have 2 questions this week. As always, enjoy.